So, all right, let's head over to the news notes, everybody. And then we'll say hi to you inside Rumble. And here it is. You got it. The MAGA minds push the new Reds scare as a veil to attack peace advocates. You got it. Strangely, Democrats in this primary didn't like voting for supporters of and paid shills of the genocide machine. So let's go over to Gen X girl as we see, Haley Stevens. I know it's shocking. She lost. It's such a sad thing. Yeah, Michigan. Yeah, so here it is. Haley Stevens, who said basically she'd give every organ she had for Israel, except, of course, they wouldn't be her organs. They'll be your organs and your children's organs. But, we're all part of the giant gestalt. Well, she lost. And instead, a man named El Sayed, he's clearly evil. He won the Democrat primary for Michigan. And yes, indeed, he could be going to Washington, D.C.
I want to end dark money in politics.
But you're the beneficiary.
Well, and certainly so is Mike Rogers, right? He's got a $45 million PAC waiting for him. I want to end dark money in politics.
She wants to end dark money in politics.
But you're the beneficiary.
Yes, but you're the beneficiary of it. So, okay. So let's look a little bit more in detail at this. All right. So they voted in the large part for this man for the Senate. And yes, another hardcore left-wing guy will probably go to the Senate. But he is in favor of stopping United States support for the genocide machine. So just like Eric Peters and I have said, and just like you'll see Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams discussing, and maybe you've had these conversations as well, we've got this unfortunate situation of it's a sword and both sides of the sword can cut. So you've got a guy who is all in favor of peace, it seems, about the United States no longer supporting this genocide, supporting perhaps a homeland for the Palestinians and getting the United States out of maybe even other regime change programs in the battle against Iran unconstitutionally. But does he also stand for a battle against you if you want to keep your money and not have it spent on what he thinks are the domestic priorities that he thinks are so important? And this is the problem. And so oftentimes when I was a kid, I used to hear people say, well, I've got to make a choice. I don't like the fact that the United States is involved with this proxy war in Panama, or they're doing this in Cuba or whatever. So I've got to vote for the Democrat. And then what happens? You get an expansion of the government. Of course you do. And even under the Democrats, you would see more wars. And you would see more police statism. You wouldn't see a decrease in the police state. You'd see people like Al Gore proudly saying that he wrote the 3 strikes law. So they don't get it that way anyway. But it does seem like there's a different crop of people out there who really seem to be very opposed to the United States warfare, at least in the immediate. And we're going to see, obviously, on the Republican side, a lot of former MAGA supporters and people who were MAGA adjacent, perhaps, and more libertarian, like Thomas Massey, got together in Maine at Tucker Carlson's place, and they are thinking about forming a new political party. Okay, so let's check this out since it's been rolling in the background. Abdul El-Sayed. Oh, no, there goes Tokyo. Oh, no, Godzilla. He just delivered the most anti-Semitic, in quotes, this is Onka, so it's being sarcastic, statement of the Michigan Senate primary. I love Judaism, and I love the Jewish people. AIPAC and Israel are not the same as Judaism and the Jewish people. I call BS. Right on, man.
AIPAC and Israel are not the same as Judaism and the Jewish people. I love Judaism and I love the Jewish people. I venerate Judaism and I venerate the Jewish people. I stand with Judaism and I stand with the Jewish people. And the single most dangerous thing that they've tried to tell us is that somehow they can extend the definition of anti-Semitism to include a foreign government and its leaders. I call bullshit. No. No. If you believe that anti-Semitism extends to include a foreign government in AIPAC, you are creating a dangerous circumstance. That's right. So it is important for us to recognize that we love Judaism and the Jewish people because we love people. And we love Palestinians and their rights because we love people. And we love that our tax dollars get spent here, on schools here, and healthcare here, because we love people.
So what happens if you'd rather hold on to your money and not have your money go into a corrupt public school system where you're going to be arguing with everybody over what goes on inside the school system? That's right. They'll conduct warfare against you. So the lesson's very clear, right? It's very clear. But we're seeing some changes within the Democrat Party. And of course, people like Schumer and others who are very hardcore Zionists work very hard to try to get anybody but him into that primary and win. But Schumer's efforts were for naught, which again, just like with the New York City mayoral race, is significant. But I think it's more significant to see the way that the MAGA people are trying to respond to it, because they're desperate to try to form some other narrative that will distract from the fact that people are attracted to these people because A, they're opposed to the Zionist war machine, and B, that rolls over into the left-wing idea of take the money and in a Gestalt groupthink way, apply it to what we all will feel comfortable in having it applied to: welfare, schools, healthcare, whatever, and that'll make us feel good. So you can see, instead of saying, stop taking people's money, conform to the Constitution, they're saying, stop taking people's money to kill people. Okay, great. And now do with it what I think should be done. So again, it's this perennial problem. But one of the things that I think is really amazing is to see how poorly the Trumpers, the Ted Cruzes, the MAGAites can handle this. They're so off the deep end, it's ridiculous. And it's worth establishing this on this day before everybody moves on to another topic, to really reiterate just how desperate these people are. Because they're so desperate, they're not even making any sense whatsoever. I mean, it sounds like a Saturday Night Live cartoon or something like that. You know, one of those midway cartoons where they take voices and make people look like the politicians. It's crazy. It's a total spoof. Let's go back over here to the news notes. Check this out. They voted for this man. There's Abdul al-Sayed. So he will be running against the Republican. And here we have, of course, formerly Democrat Zionists are joining Trump, and Trump loves it because, of course, he's easily flattered. So, yeah, we have Alan Dershowitz saying he's going to join the Republican Party. And Trump says, wow, the highly respected Alan Dershowitz, you know, Epstein lawyer Alan Dershowitz, the highly respected Dershowitz has written a powerful new book, Why I Quit the Dems and So Should You. Alan is a great American patriot who understands the wisdom and courage it takes to defend democracy from communism. There we go. And of course, we know that they were spouting this weeks ago. So what's the first thing I heard at 6 this morning when I woke up listening to WRKO in Boston? The MAGAite Jeff Cooner, same thing. It's almost like they plug them in during the night while they're sleeping and they give them their instructions. I mean, talk about brain chip receivers. He has been spouting the same line. And for those of us who had to go through the COVID nonsense, where they kept telling people that, oh, you don't trust the science, you're a COVID skeptic, you're all these things, all the brickbats they threw at us, it's the same thing now. You are not a communist if you are opposed to genocide. You're not a social democrat if you're opposed to the United States breaching the Constitution and committing war crimes, killing people in Venezuela on the eastern shores of the Pacific. You're not a communist, clearly. And this needs to be stressed on this day when I am here at the hometown of the original Uncle Sam. Maybe some people like you were speaking up about this, and maybe it deserves reiteration. After most of the day, many people did touch upon this, but it needs a little further punch, because this sort of disrespect for me or you or anybody draws away from actual, real wrongdoing. And it's so transparent that, it, again, with the Streisand effect, those of us who are awake can see it just makes them look even worse. So we've got, of course, this. Epstein's lawyer, Jewish American Zionist, Epstein Island visitor, accused of rape by Epstein survivors, publicly argued that adults should be allowed to have sex with 14-year-old children. And then Trump says, Allen is a great American patriot. Yeah, there you go. So that's Dersh. Meanwhile, finally, the comical circus of Ted Cruz, spewing more boogeyman tales. Absolutely incredible. Here he is. And I thought Owen Shroyer wrapped it up pretty well. We'll show you what Owen had to say. I don't want to cut him out either. So he did a good job. I said, oh man, I just wrote, this is insufferable. Even comic writing, like the teams on Saturday Night Live, wouldn't come up with zany stuff like this.
Is that where the energy is? They want to cancel Thanksgiving?
They're crazy enough, yes. They want to cancel Thanksgiving. They want to cancel Christmas. Look, these communists hate America. They hate capitalism. El Sayed is also an Islamist, as is Mondami. And look, you see the green.
So I think one of the most important things here, as a person who teaches economics and tries to explain to people the real meaning of words, or tries at least to adhere to it in my own daily routine, and if I make a mistake, I ask people to correct me on it. When he tries to associate the pro-peace people with being somehow anti-capitalist, he does a disservice to the term capitalist, because what he's actually defending is fascism. He's defending warmongers, and he's defending the Israeli wrap-in of capitalism. So somehow, if you're opposed to Israel, you're opposed to capitalism, you're opposed to Thanksgiving. Do you feel like you've been spit at today? Maybe like the Christians in Jerusalem or Israel, when the Zionist occupiers spit on them?
Green-red convergence, where the communists and the Islamists, they want Sharia law, they hate Jews, they hate Christians, they hate capitalism, they hate America.
No, you're trying to tie all this together so that you can try to get through November. It's so simple. Why do you do this nonsense? Again, it's so obvious. It just draws more attention to you. And finally, Owen Shroyer doing a really good job. And I got to say, what I've seen, I've appreciated Owen. I know he and Tony Arterburn are friends, and Tony's such a great guy. And I think Owen is doing a good job now that he's, away from Alex. He's probably, much more independent on what he can do for his career plans and things like that as well. Probably doesn't feel constrained by Alex telling him do this or do that. And so Owen says about this Dershowitz thing, he says, seriously, explain Trump purging patriots, OG MAGA and conservatives, and replacing them with, checks notes, Epstein's lawyer. This thing is such an unreal disaster words can't describe, except maybe the Epstein administration. So that's our hors d'oeuvre, our appetizer for the day. Oh, and by the way, thus, of course, a new anti-war political group is arising. And tomorrow, we are supposed to hear more about this. Actually, we'll probably hear more about it tonight from Tucker Carlson. Now, Mario Nawfal's got this, of course, and Mario he tries to play it pretty straight down the line. Sometimes I think he's a little bit too trying to be fair, but he has this. A new anti-war political movement is taking shape with the goal of running a presidential candidate in 2028. Representative Thomas Massey, Joe Kent, and others met at Tucker Carlson's home after deciding both major parties keep delivering the same result, more war. Well, if they would embrace peace domestically, then they could join the Libertarian Party. Unfortunately, the Libertarian Party, there's a constant battle there as well. And if you run as a Libertarian in any state, the Republicans do all sorts of shenanigans because they know you're going to draw votes away from them, which is exactly what happened to me. I wasn't going to take the office, but I ran for Senate for the Libertarians just so I could get into the debates. And suddenly I discovered, actually not even suddenly, I discovered a year later that somebody went into Wikipedia and erased me from Wikipedia during that race. Why? Because they thought I would draw 3 to 4% away from disaffected Republicans, and that would allow the Democrat to get in. It's amazing. And it's all out of fear. They don't have anything on which they can run because they know people aren't satisfied with them. And they know that if they actually conform to the Constitution, their arms manufacturing buddies would turn elsewhere. And so would the Israelis. Tucker Carlson has been asked to run and thus far has said no, says Mario. I could see a lot of people getting behind something like this after decades of disappointment from Republicans and Democrats. So here's Joe Kent with the Young Turks.
Extraordinary photograph that emerged over the weekend. And you were in this picture. It was at Tucker Carlson's home. You're in there with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie, Tucker. What was this? There is word that you're all planning, as Marjorie Taylor Greene put it, a new political movement. Could this involve establishing a new party?
So that was yesterday. Today we're back together again on the Young Turks instead of Piers Morgan. So Joe, tell us, could it potentially be a new third party?
It certainly could. I mean, when I got together with Tucker, with Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, as we were just kind of comparing notes, most of us came to the conclusion that most Americans that we talk to, they're sick of the Republicans. They're sick of the Democrats. Now, most of us, have been in Trump world for quite some time. All of us kind of had our own, break, to put it politely, with the Trump administration. And even a lot of like hardcore Trump supporters right now, they feel very betrayed. I mean, one of the core tenets of President Trump's agenda was no more endless wars. I became a Trump supporter in 2016 when Trump went after Jeb Bush on the debate stage because I served and fought in Iraq, lost lots of friends there. We have all come to our own conclusions that, look, this is not working. And the confines of the traditional Republican Party, the traditional Democrat Party, most people are just sick of that. And so we do think that there is, I would say from, a lot of your viewers, from people who find themselves, more on the left, people who find themselves more on the right, we don't think the current political system is working just because.
All right. So I think it says it pretty well. And I don't want to cut Joe Kent off. But, we'll see how it goes. And I know, many people, it's not that they're cynical. It's just that, they've learned from history. They know the way these sorts of things go. And perhaps they do feel a little bit of chagrin on seeing people who put so much faith into Donald Trump. Whereas as an anarchist like me, I don't put faith in any of those things. Maybe some people are even asking, why are you covering this if you're an anarchist? And I just want to bring it up that I think there's room, obviously, to be able to converse with people like this. And even if I can't get someone to agree with the panoply of principles I might have, to get a fair assessment of where they stand on things and why they might be thinking there's a bit of hope to go in that direction. And I think a lot of libertarians, every 4 years, we would hear, oh, there's hope for the libertarians. They might score a victory here. They might get a congressman in there and that sort of thing. And then it doesn't happen. Here in New Hampshire, they have had an effect. The Free State Project has had a massive effect on the state legislature in not just combating the flood of Massachusetts leftists who are coming in here, but in addition to that, doing things policy-wise that actually saw some improvements on things like decriminalization of medical marijuana. They got rid of the car registration requirement here in the state, all things due to the mixture of libertarians and Republicans. They often ran as Republicans for the state legislature. So that has had an effect. But on the larger scale, is it possible, especially with the system that's set up with the primaries and the giant corporations and things like that? New Hampshire, a little bit different, very large legislature, a lot of decentralization, still powers with the towns and so on. Well, it remains to be seen. But I think to put a good punctuation mark on this to hopefully derive a lesson from it, or a couple. One is to, I always want to make sure that I can open the door to people like Joe Kent, who, by the way, if you've been watching Jim Webb, if you're watching Joe Kent, if you're watching Tucker Carlson just had on a very, very hardcore anarcho-capitalist, Daryl Cooper. And he's connected with Scott Horton. Of course, they do a podcast together. So I know some people are very skeptical of Tucker Carlson, you know, this background, his father in the CIA and stuff. And Tucker Carlson recently acknowledged that he stayed with CNN far too long. And he said, I'll quote him, much to my chagrin or shame, I think, close quote. So he's acknowledged some of those things. And I don't think a guy like Joe Kent is an agent, but I do have questions as to, you know, why he didn't leave the Trump administration when they attacked Yemen, right? When he was engaging in the extrajudicial murders and other massively unconstitutional things last year, when he was engaging in unconstitutional tariffs. Maybe with the tariff thing, that's a learning curve. And, you know, people would say, oh, you know, he hadn't investigated it. But when it comes to the use of the military without a declared war, that's a very clear line. And so I'd like to hear from him and say, you know, maybe he would say, you know, you're right. I hadn't really understood what the Constitution said. I went into it eagerly. I thought I could do something. Maybe that's what he would say. You know, there are certain people I think I would give a lot of leeway and have a conversation with these people, right? And that being said, the overall structure of things might not change at all. But I think it's important to bring this up because for me, there are these punctuation points. One is the Trump administration trying to frame this as a battle between so-called capitalism and communism, when it's really a battle between fascist warmongers in the Republican Party and in some cases the Democrat Party against socialist welfarist people in the Democrat Party who are opposed to kinetic warfare internationally. And what is being lost is the concept of capitalism that I think long ago really lost its power, which is the synonymous nature of it being connoted with free markets. Now, capitalism is associated with fascism, essentially, crony capitalism, mercantilism. And so I try to use the term free markets much more. So I think it's important to just bring those up because as a person who looks at these stories and sees a guy like Ted Cruz trying to leverage the word capitalism, it can't go unanswered. You know, I can't get on here and say, oh, I didn't hear that. I didn't see anything about that. I've got to address it. Because otherwise, if I didn't, I would be basically lying through omission. I'd be letting something slide that I was aware of, and I didn't say anything. So I thought it was important to bring it up, and I'm going to try to call Jeff Cooner's show tomorrow to say, hey, you know, you're trying to frame this as a battle between capitalism and socialism or communism. That's just rhetorical wallpapering. And all you're really doing is trying to support fascism. You're not supporting capitalism at all. Let's get it straight. Can we at least be honest with each other on that, regardless of what we think is going to happen for these races and these people who are earnestly, it seems to me, earnestly trying to do something. And again, I wouldn't vote for anybody because I'm not going to vote for an office, but I do think it's worth discussing because these people are going to work very hard. And by the way, here in New Hampshire, I fully expect some very strong investors to start getting involved with this because Tucker Carlson lives right over the border. I mean, he's right on the border between Maine and New Hampshire. Like, I know where he lives. So there you go. He's got a lot of friends in New Hampshire, and New Hampshire is a primary state. So you're going to see a lot of battling going on between the traditional GOP and all the lawyers who are associated with that, and even maybe some traditional Democrats and this new group. And I think this new group's going to get a lot of money, and they're going to be strong in New Hampshire because Tucker's in Maine. So you just watch. So, and by the way, they're going to have to be very careful about the people they vet, because one of the things that is going to be extremely important here is the quality of character or the vulnerability of any of the candidates or people that are associated with this group. If they've got any checkered anything in their background, they really shouldn't be part of this because they're going to get hauled through every possible media siphon to attack them. So that's it for that coverage. I will show you a couple other real quick ones here. I said, yes, anti-war, a message from the MAGAs out there. And here's what actually a number of Michigan voters had to say. And I thought it was worthwhile. So we've got this. Here we go.
I don't want somebody that's in somebody else's pocket that they have to agree to what they want to. There's too many people like that in politics.
Abdul.
And why is that?
Because he doesn't take money from AIPAC. I'm not voting for anybody who takes money from AIPAC.
And why is that?
Because the money should be spent here, not over there.
Overall change in people who had an independent view and thought process of what's right for the voters, not what's right for corporate PACs or what's right for any affiliations that support them.
And of course, this is sentimentally what people are drawing. They're drawing the lines between the corporations have been given favors. It's all a corporate game against us, the people on the ground, the working people, and we want our money. That's the way it's going to be framed, which is, it's a spin on essentially what Marx did when they were moving out of the royal peerage system and going into the industrial revolution phase. And some people involved with industry were getting special favors from parliament. And a lot of the people who were the so-called plebes didn't like it. And so Marx appealed to those people, whether it be in England or France or other places in Europe that simultaneously were emerging from the Industrial Revolution and seeing a lot of these special favors being handed to these groups. And a lot of that actually started with things like the guilds. In medieval Germany, the special interest guilds, and then they started to rise up as the Industrial Revolution rose and the peerage system dropped. The guilds started to show a lot more power. Corporations started to form, and they were off to the races. So there's that, everybody. I hope that's worthwhile. And of course, I've got this. The question remains eternal. Will leftists who oppose kinetic war also begin to see that statism is war against others for reasons that the leftists believe are good, instead of leaving people in peace? And here's Ron Paul and Daniel McAdams offering more on this. Or we're going to have an ad.
My fellow patriots,
we don't want to hear
the first thing.
The richest and have the most weapons, you rule. But that's all in a mess right now. It's up for grabs. And I think there's going to be a lot of grabbing. And when this dust settles, which might take a month or 2 years or however, but the dust is stirring right now, I think will have to be settled. And that's what they're all fighting over. Who's going to have the broom to sweep up the dust?
Yeah, and there's a lot of dust around for sure. But the real attention last night, of course, was the Haley Stevens, Abdul al-Sayed race for the U.S. Senate from Michigan. And that was a real square off. When you put up that first clip, you can see he scored a win. Abdul al-Sayed, I think he is a healthcare worker, wins Michigan's Democratic Senate primary, notching a Midwest victory for the left. Now, this will be framed in left and right terms, Dr. Paul. I think that's really the only thing that the American media and a lot of the American electorate understands. He was backed by AOC, by Bernie Sanders. I think he considers himself a democratic socialist, so definitely someone on the left. If you go, skip one because I got him in the wrong order. If you go to that one where it's his actual post on X with his picture, there you go. Here's basically what his campaign was in a nutshell, Dr. Paul. Money out of politics, money in your pocket, Medicare for all. Michigan, we won. I'm so proud to be your Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate. Let's win in November. So you can tell that's obviously a message that resonates in the U.S. Americans, I think, are concerned with the money that's in politics. They're concerned that the money in our pocket is going away, and they have healthcare concerns. Now, obviously, we share the concerns about our messed up healthcare system in the U.S. Our solution would be a different solution than Medicare for all. However, when you're looking at the average voter, it's a good message, I think, for people who are concerned.
Right, and that'll be ongoing. And I think people should aim in on where does the problem come? Why does this happening? Because if that's a terrible list of things that the socialists are, bragging about, at the same time, you hear whispers and innuendos from the Republican Party, but we don't go away feeling good about it because most of the time it's just a variation of the same thing, and that is government power. And I think the emphasis, whether it's medical care, education, AI, all the things, the regulations, whether it's the First Amendment or whether it's a foreign policy, I think that people have to be concerned about, this distortion of who the intellectual enemies are. And of course, the Democrats say the Republicans say the Democrats are the enemy. And I think the enemy of the people, for the people have been this concept of the acceptance of corporatism built into our system, which has been growing for decades. And I think it's incestuous style. There is, and I think it's mixed in with the desperate danger of inflationism, because all of a sudden there's a lot of people and a lot of money going on. It looks like they will keep this fight going on forever, but it's in the tune of trillions and trillions of dollars. There has to be a bubble out there, and there has to be a pin someplace that's going to burst it. But it's positively amazing. And yet, even with all that negatives, information or my thoughts, there's a lot of good people there. They're misled. Too many people, accept the idea that it's not the government, it's the government's responsibility to make us safe and healthy and free and happy, the whole works. And they go along with this and they deliver this responsibility away from themselves. And I think we run out of steam and we run out of money, we run out of ideas. And that's why elections are important. And I give you a lot of credit for keeping up with these elections, because they are hints on which way we're doing.
So stop it there. Ron Paul's message is obviously very clear. And again, it's unfortunate, I think, that the lines become so stark for the people on the ground who now see the left-wingers as not just opposed to the war, opposed to the genocide, but opposed to the big corporate interests that are taking their money for their own purposes and not leaving it in the ground for the grassroots to grow amongst their communities. And instead, they're going to be asking for a larger welfare state. And it's the welfare state. It goes for, corporations and for the so-called classic welfarism of Medicaid, that, environmental cleanups that shouldn't be happening, that the states should be handling themselves, or special projects or education or whatever. We know the education department's not going to end under Donald Trump. We know that they're going to be handing out more money. They're not going to be decreasing money. And yet these people now see this giant war machine as being something different than what they want, which is a giant welfare machine. And who can blame these people who might think, my life is being screwed over. I could be earning a lot more. They're sending the United States soldiers over there. Why not bring it all home? And that's what they see. That's the picture they see. Okay. Well, let's look at some of this warfare information. And I want to check in with you, everybody, and touch on your subjects and your thoughts inside Rumble. If I've missed anything, just repost those ideas or anything like that. And of course, if you want the comments seen longer, put them in the comments section, or you can hop over to X and check out the X feed over there, share and recycle the X, and drop your comments there. We'll get those on the screen.